Hi everyone, tonight is Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I wanted to take a moment to recognize this very important holiday. In Israel, it's called Yom HaShoah. Like every Jewish holiday, it starts the evening before. All Jewish holidays go from sundown to sundown, and so I did want to recognize the 6 million Jews that perished in the Holocaust. But anybody who studied the Holocaust knows that it wasn't just the Jews that were murdered. 6 million of those that were killed were Jews, but there were millions of others that were also rounded up because they were disabled or black or political opponents or gay or gypsies, Roma at the time, or any other quote unquote undesirable. And with this rise of anti-Semitism that a lot of people are feeling, it is important to remind people what is said about the Holocaust, which is what starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews. Again, these other groups of people were not the targets of Nazi hate, but they did end up getting killed along with the Jews. A lot of people right now are also seeing this rise of anti-Semitism that they never had seen in their lives. They thought, oh, maybe anti-Semitism is minimal. What's scary is that a lot of us have grown up learning about how propaganda kept Jews from their jobs, from school, from being allowed to walk in certain areas. And we are now seeing a lot of the things that we have grown up learning about our Jewish history and what led to the murder of so many people, not just with the Holocaust, but we have a long history of people trying to kill the Jews. So this hits really hard when we see what's happening on college campuses and we see a lot of the rise in anti-Semitism. For a lot of people, it's very, very scary, which is why I wanted to acknowledge it. I didn't want the evening to pass without acknowledging that it is Holocaust Remembrance Day tomorrow. This is a very difficult time for a lot of Jewish people. Do check in on your Jewish friends. Do call and see how people are doing. Especially this Holocaust Remembrance Day is unlike previous Holocaust Remembrance Days because of all of the hate we've seen as a result of October 7th. What's terrifying to Jewish people and to myself is that the Holocaust happened because people allowed it to happen. And what we're seeing on college campuses, chants against Jews or Zionist or whatever word you want to use, we fear that this is rhetoric that will become normalized, and that people will just become immune to it, think that it's not a big deal. But anytime there has ever been hate against the Jews, it's bad for the entire society. Anti-Semitism is one of the oldest forms of hate, and how a civilization treats its Jews is reflective of the health of that society. So it's very scary what we're seeing right now. Nobody wants to see these chants and this hate become normalized, and that people become used to it. And so that's why it's so important for me to acknowledge tomorrow being Holocaust Remembrance Day. We are at a point in our history where there are very few Holocaust survivors left to hear firsthand testimonies from, and there are people who still don't believe that it happened despite all of the records that the Nazis themselves took. That's what happens when you have anti-Semitism. Holocaust denialism is a form of anti-Semitism, very reminiscent of October 7th denialism. But when it comes to Holocaust survivors, what we're seeing right now is that the children and the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors are now stepping up to speak about the Holocaust in their place. There's a saying that if you have heard a Holocaust survivor speak, you now have a responsibility to share that knowledge. I have been privileged enough to hear some Holocaust survivors tell their story, some whom have since passed away. And so it is important to recognize this terrible stain on world history. We're hearing words like genocide being thrown around on college campuses, but this actually was the worst genocide of the 20th century, and it was perpetrated against the Jews as the world stood by and allowed it to happen. And so it is important to speak out, it is important to acknowledge it, and so that's what I wanted to do tonight, is to acknowledge that tomorrow is Yom HaShoah, and the thing that we always want to say on this commemorative holiday is never again.